Hello and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM, our flagship TV and radio stations on the Oakland County Megacast network of community television, radio, and other media outlets. It's not just your regular TV show or radio show, not just your regular simulcast or a regular broadcast. It's a broadcast, it's a simulcast, and it's a webcast, all encompassed in one network of community television, radio, and online outlets. The Oakland County Megacast on Civic Center TV and Birmingham Area Municipal Access on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. Online in high definition, CivicCenterTV.com. You'll click on the Watch Live link. You can watch this show and all of our other original programming live in high definition, CivicCenterTV.com. In addition, we're on 89.3 Lakes FM and LakesFM.com and 88.1 WBFH The Biff. That a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District under the leadership of Station Manager Ron Whittables. And today we are on Facebook Live from the page of the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. We thank Suzanne Levine, Vito Kukuru, and the entire team at the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce for joining us today. If you are tuning in for the first time from the Facebook page of the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon live here on our family of TV, radio, and other media outlets on the Oakland County Megacast. And you can also find all of our previous shows, short clips, and interviews online on CivicCenterTV.com/megacast. Then on CivicCenterTV.com/coronavirus, we have information about COVID-19 from national, state, and local level, at the national, state, and local level, from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention at the federal level, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and many of our local municipalities. So you can find information about COVID-19 and a variety of different levels directly from the sources you need to find them from. No need to jump through hoops to find COVID-19 information from your town, as well as news and information about COVID-19 and other top stories. And today our top story: school districts struggle to finalize back-to-school plans. Michigan will not have a uniform statewide K-12 reopening plan this school year for its 544 Michigan traditional school districts and nearly 300 public school academies. The first day of school for 1.5 million children will look different in every district in Michigan, where hundreds of different reopening plans will soon be underway as educators resume teaching amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Because districts have local control, each district has come up with its own plan using guidance from governor's executive orders on reopening schools, with some districts opening classrooms to students as early as August 26th. Traditional school districts and nearly 300 public school academies. As more districts announce their intentions this month, all districts must have a plan approved and in place by August 17th. We're getting really down to the wire here, Ronnie, with these plans. They're ever changing with these school districts as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to throw pivots and throw curveballs at school districts and at other various industries, and they're looking at school districts in other states and other regions of the country that have reopened and some of the struggles that they've had as well, and modifying their plans based on those actions.
School districts and parents like stability so that they can make plans that are the best for them and their families. However, this COVID-19 virus does not allow for any type of stability, and everyone is really having to learn to be flexible as we go forward. And Tyler, one of the things we're already seeing in other parts of the country, schools that are reopening are having to adjust because they're getting positive tests back, as they're going along. So then they're having to switch back to remote learning, which once again, that's throwing another curveball, as you stated, into the parent schedule, as well as their work schedule, their child care schedule, and things of that nature.
Then you see situations like we've seen, for example, in Georgia with that school that did have several positive tests. They've now switched all back to virtual, at least for the next few weeks, while they get that situation under control. But luckily in the state of Michigan, they are required to have plans that are in place for multiple phases, which include virtual and in-person learning, so that those pivots will be made a little bit more easier, a little bit smoother transitions better than what we saw in March when we initially came into this pandemic. Other top stories at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus on the topic of returning kids to schools. We have the news that more teens are testing positive for the coronavirus. My apologies for the mic flag dropping. Despite being in the middle of a pandemic, it's been a summer of unofficial proms, grad parties, sleepovers, yard parties, gatherings at the lake, and just hanging out with friends for area teens. The problem is, health officers say mask wearing and social distancing went out the window. Now they are seeing numbers of positive COVID-19 cases in younger people on the rise in Michigan, as well as spots across the United States and the world. Before June, children and teens mostly made up 1 to 3% of COVID-19 cases in Michigan. A month after the order lifted on July 1st, that age group made up 3.9% of the cases. During the past 2 weeks from July 21st to August 7th, the age group saw an increase in cases of almost 2 percentage points, 5.7% to 7.4%, which makes this even more concerning as we're preparing to send a lot of these kids back to school in some cases, or they're going to be going off to college where they're going to have even more social opportunities, or they're going into the workplace. And one way or another, they're becoming a higher risk group for COVID-19 cases, while at the same time, as we saw, as cases in Michigan shifted to being more heavily in the older population to more in the younger population, they're maybe not as symptomatic and are able to spread it a little more clandestine than somebody that would be showing symptoms.
Well, this could also be a result as why we're seeing the number of hospitalizations as well as deaths decline in the state of Michigan, because this virus is shifting to the younger group and their symptoms don't tend to be as severe, which once again is probably playing into the factor of why they are putting their guard down and they're not wearing masks. However, just like all of us, we need to remember it's not so much about you, it's about the people around you. It's about your grandparents, your loved ones, your aunts, your uncles, and so forth and so on. But this is not surprising at all. And I think you're going to continue over the next couple of weeks, see that number even continue to stay steady or rise, because it's about a 2-week lag time by the time they attend these parties, and then we get the results of some of the tests and they get sick. So I think we're going to continue to see this throughout the summer, and then especially going into the fall time with the students going back to college.
More stories at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Oakland County reminding testing sites to report results promptly. Urgent cares, pharmacies, and doctors' offices are urged to promptly report Oakland County residents' COVID-19 test results to Oakland County's Health Division. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, Section 18115, requires that molecular PCR or Abbott ID Now and antigen test results must be reported within 24 hours of test completion through existing public health reporting methods. Quote, swift reporting of test results detecting COVID-19 is essential to reducing the spread of the disease so that our region does not take a step back in the governor's reopening plan, said Oakland County Executive Dave Coulter. He continued, we urge all of our urgent cares, pharmacies, medical providers to follow these guidelines so each positive case is immediately investigated and contacts are identified, and closed quote. The CARES Act requires facilities or locations performing testing to report data for all diagnostic testing completed for each individual tested within 24 hours of results being known. This also in a continued effort by outlets in the state for testing results to get those results in quicker to the state of Michigan so that they can make more informed decisions earlier about where to go in the Michigan Safe Start Plan and any further restrictions that may need to be put in place in an abundance of caution.
Because when we have a lag in the results, it makes it also a lag in trying to track who had it, where it came from, and then trying to contain the virus. So we've seen this be an issue, and hopefully they can start to rein this in, because the quicker you know, the better you can respond.
Lastly, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Michigan reports more than 500 additional cases of coronavirus. The state of Michigan reported 514 new cases of COVID-19 on Sunday and 2 additional deaths. Sunday's update brings the state's total number of cases to 87,403 and a total number of 6,249 deaths. The total number of deaths were reduced by 1 by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. According to the site, 3 deaths that were reported previously were corrected by local health jurisdictions. Quote, these cases may have been recorded as deceased in error, or jurisdictions may have received additional information indicating previously reported deaths were determined to not be COVID-19 associated, and closed quote, the department posted online. So that number still hovering around the 400 to 600 on better days in the state of Michigan. Low death numbers, as you had said before. We're continuing to see a higher volume of cases from younger populations.
What makes this so hard is it's about the data, and your information that you're releasing is only as good as the numbers that you're putting out. So when there's discrepancy in the numbers, if there's a delay in the numbers, it makes it harder to come up with an accurate profile of what is really going on.
Those stories and more at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. In addition, you can find more information about COVID-19 at the federal level from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the state of Michigan at the state level, of course, and from the local level from Oakland County and many of our local municipalities. civiccentertv.com/coronavirus is your home for coronavirus information in Oakland County as we continue to cover the stories of the COVID-19 pandemic and how it has impacted a number of different industries, a number of different people, and of course has impacted a number of different businesses. And joining us now to talk about that from an automotive standpoint, we're pleased to be joined by the president and CEO of the Center for Automotive Research. Carla Bailo is with us now on the Oakland County Megacast. Carla, thank you for being with us today.
It's a pleasure.
Appreciate having you on. How are you? How's your team at the Center for Automotive Research been?
Well, we've been doing the best we can in the virtual world. No one really is back in the office. Everyone's staying safe, and our research has been going quite well, actually.
So, Carla, for those who are unfamiliar, what kind of research in the automotive industry does the center perform in normal times, and what kind of research are they performing during these times that we're in during the pandemic?
Yeah, well, one thing that's good about a crisis is it does, enable, or a lot of people need research done to try to understand what's happening and what that means for their future business. So our whole mission is the sustainability of the automotive industry. And we have 2 particular research teams. One is business, which looks at economics, forecasting, sales trends, impacts of trade and tariffs, which, as you know, we just got another 10% on Canadian aluminum over the weekend. And then the other group is technology, and that's where we look at materials, lightweighting, smart factory, smart city, smart mobility, public transit, urban planning. We do a vast array of research for the industry.
Carla Bailo with us. She is the president and CEO of the Center for Automotive Research. Carla, on a large scale level, and this is a very broad question, how has the automotive industry been impacted positively and negatively by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, when it first hit, clearly everything was shut down. So that was a huge financial hit. That was billions of dollars, for the second quarter, which we saw in many of the second quarter reports. Now, the good side is, they did pivot and really supported the country, supported their workforce in creating PPE of all kinds, be it face masks, face shields, ventilators. There was tremendous work done by the engineering horsepower that exists in the automotive industry. So financially, it was a big hit. Then, of course, all the manufacturing had to quickly be reworked for the restart protocols to make sure that the workers could stay healthy, which, impacted the layout of the floor. Now, the other part of this, there's 2 other pieces besides healthy workers. You've got to have a healthy supply chain, and that is a global supply chain. So making sure that, you had resiliency from parts you were getting from Mexico. The whole world had to cooperate in that. And third is healthy demand from the customer. And so far, it stayed pretty healthy, especially for full-size trucks and electrified vehicles. Again, that's going to be dependent on how long this lasts and, how much free money people have to actually purchase a vehicle.
So, Carla, mentioning the global chain supply, Do you foresee there's going to be a disruption, a continued disruption as this virus circles the globe?
It may actually be so because there are parts that come from Vietnam, from the Philippines, from Mexico, from Canada, from Europe, you name it. And it really depends where the hot spots are and if they're able to keep the manufacturing plants up and running. Most of the automotive companies have now tried to diversify their supply chain as much as possible so that if they can't get it from one source, they can get it from another. This has been going on for a number of years since we started having, starting with earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, so many natural disasters that have disrupted the supply chain. So you really look for that way to be able to get the parts from multiple sources.
Why do you think we're seeing a surge in used car sales?
Well, there's probably two big reasons for that. The first one, and this is what the dealerships told me, is many of the people who rely on public transit at this stage don't trust public transit. So they were telling me they couldn't keep vehicles on their lot that were under $10,000. People just needed a cheap car to get to and from their workplace because they just don't trust getting on public transit. Again, it depends how long the pandemic lasts. Secondly, there is a dearth of used cars right now. We got many coming in from people turning in leases. We got a bunch coming in from car rental companies. So there are a lot of really great cars in the used market that are pretty good bargains. Now we've started to see residuals go up because that market's getting hot. The used car price is going up. And also people's income. I mean, when you're under income duress, then you tend to go for something more affordable, which a used car is.
Carla Bailo with us. She's the president and CEO of the Center for Automotive Research with us on the Oakland County Megacast on our family of community television, radio, and other media outlets. So on that note, we talk about the used car sales going up. How have new car sales and leases been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, actually, the sales have stayed pretty strong, but it depends which segment of vehicle you're talking about. Full-size trucks, we can't get enough of them. Still, that's going very strong. Now, what you're seeing, though, is you're seeing longer lease terms or longer loan terms to get that, that monthly payment down. So we're seeing a little bit of the cash crunch that is happening in households. Electrified vehicles, mainly led by Tesla and also Toyota. Toyota's come up with several new vehicles that you can only get a hybrid. You cannot even get just a pure internal combustion engine anymore. The rest of the segments are down. Sedan sales still continue to be down. CUVs are just a little below that average. So as long as we keep, getting the vehicles to the dealer and the consumer has the financial ability to purchase. So it's really going to depend how employment continues to grow and, how we can continue to supplement. I'm sure the $400 that was just signed as an executive order will help.
Why do you think people are buying the full-size trucks now? I get why, maybe they're holding off on the luxury cars or the sedans, but what is it about a truck that makes it so popular right now?
Well, there's a few things. One is a lot of people are wanting to do-it-yourself stuff, things that they would normally maybe, hire someone to do. They're doing it themselves. So they need the space. Secondly, there's still a lot of need in businesses for trucks, be it landscaping, be it construction. Construction is booming. Construction in cottages, especially in Michigan, is booming. What's happening there. And RV sales are going up and up and up. People can use that kind of a product to tow, their trailer to get a fifth wheel. They feel comfortable in their own little cocoon. And we've seen more and more of that. So I think that's it, cocooning and for business-related needs.
Carla Bailo with us. She's the president and CEO of the Center for Automotive Research with us on the Oakland County Megacast. So with everything that's gone on during the COVID-19 pandemic, all the lessons that have been learned, all the pivots that have been made by companies in the automotive industry, what does the future prospects look like? What changes can we expect in the automotive industry, and how will COVID-19 impact this industry going forward?
I think you're going to see a completely different manufacturing facility. I mean, right now things have been modified so that they can be safe, but there will be more automation. It will be coming where, that way you can make sure that people are safe by doing things behind the scenes and more robotics. You're also going to see a very strict adherence to cost control, because when your sales are fluctuating, cost management, cost control is vital. And the third thing that you're going to see is looking at your supply chain, the resiliency of that, perhaps more reshoring and onshoring, to make sure that supply chain is very robust.
Carla, Detroit and Metro Detroit, the state of Michigan, is still such a highly automotive-centric economy. And with you mentioning more automation to come in the future, what do you believe is the impact that's going to have potentially on jobs in this industry? Because that's got to be a concern of the people that are already working in the automotive industry and those that are looking to get into that industry going forward.
Sure. I think when we think about that, when we think about, the world of autonomous cars or even electrified vehicles that have a lot less moving parts, when we talk about what is going to happen inevitably due to technology, we need to also have the conversation about what that means for jobs, for retraining and reskilling. And in today's world where you really have this exponential ramp up of technology, if you're not continuously learning and being retrained and reskilled, you're suddenly going to be obsolete. So we have to have both conversations at the same time and make sure that those people that their jobs may be in jeopardy, that we make sure that we have plans in place to do that kind of retraining and reskilling.
You mentioned electric vehicles. I know I have 2 cars, and one of them is a smart car, fully electric. People make fun of me all the time, but I have to tell you, I love that car. And going forward, my next car would probably be a fully electric car. Do you think we're going to see more electric vehicles, and not just cars, but scooters and things of that nature going forward?
You're going to see more electric vehicles throughout the whole portfolio, because not only are, electric vehicles don't have to be small like a smart car anymore. They are great performance vehicles. We've got the Mach-E coming. We've got electric pickups coming. As people have realized through this pandemic, they don't need to have a vehicle that can go 400 miles. They don't drive that much, and work from home probably isn't going to go away anytime soon. And in some cases, people will never go back into the office. So an electric vehicle fits their lifestyle very, very well. So we're going to start to see that proliferation. And along with that, we have to have the charging stations and the infrastructure set up properly. And that's also being thought of in most states and most cities now.
Carla Bailo with us. She is the president and CEO of the Center for Automotive Research with us on the Oakland County Megacast. So, Carla, just a few more minutes with you here. Is there anything else that you think is important for us to know, for our audience to know about the automotive industry going forward, or any other projections about the future for the industry that would be interesting for us to know?
Well, I think, there's been a lot of talk about electrification, a lot of talk about automation, meaning driverless vehicles. That work is still going to go on. Electrification is going to just keep going and progressing at the same rate that everyone's talking about. Automation is tough, and self-driving vehicles, it's going to be a little bit longer. But what we have found during the pandemic is autonomous vehicles are helping a lot with the delivery of goods, helping a lot with delivery of medications. And I think we're going to see that just increase exponentially through everything from vehicles to semi-trucks to even small robots that just rove on the streets. We see a lot more of that in the near future as we seek to have more contactless options.
Well, Carla, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
Appreciate having you on. Carla Bailo, the president and CEO of the Center for Automotive Research, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And with so much of Metro Detroit and with so much of the state of Michigan relying on this industry for jobs, and so much of our economy still being centered on the automotive industry, good news and some short-term bad news from Carla, but overall, really good prospects still looking for the future as the automotive industry has made major pivots during the COVID-19 pandemic, continues to make them, but is setting itself up well for the future, Ronnie.
I recently saw, I believe it was on 60 Minutes, where they did a story about the self-driving semi-trucks. I will say I thought there's no way that this is actually going to happen, but they are now testing this and testing it on the roadways and major freeways. So as she was saying, I think we are going to start seeing more of this come forward, because it's like she mentioned, you don't have to worry about, the people being in the car. It's self-driving. It's, this fear of having contact with other people and their viruses, or even what's even left behind, like if you can leave it on the surface and this, that, and the other. So I think that is going to be an emerging area that maybe is going to get pushed through a little bit faster if this pandemic continues to carry on. But I think even when this one is over, there's always going to be that fear of the next one, and lessons learned from this will be a part of our future.
I think there's been so much focus during the pandemic about how can we make our industries and our society more efficient so that we are limiting touch points, we're limiting interactions where maybe we previously didn't think about whether or not they were necessary, but we're learning now that they're not entirely necessary and there's a better way to do it. And that's definitely going to affect the automotive industry that was already turning toward more of an automation-based future, and now they have even more incentive to do so.
It's going to be interesting to see how the unions handle this, because we are very much a very strong union city and state. And now when you have a situation such as this coming through a pandemic, there is science behind trying to support some of these new technologies going forward. But of course, when you do that, that's requiring maybe a loss of employees, but if not a loss of employees, retraining the employees and needing a different skilled employee going forward.
And that's why I asked that question. I was very curious about what sort of prospects there were for that, because this area that we're in, the state that we're in, is so automotive focused on an economic level that if there's not emphasis on jobs continuing forward when automation comes more into play, that's going to be a huge concern for people. But it sounds from what Carla was saying, the focus isn't going to be on replacing jobs with automation. It's going to be on reworking jobs with automation coming into play. So good news, at least on that front, from the automotive industry as we continue forward through this pandemic and into the future. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about getting your kids prepared for school with the owner of Mathnasium. That coming up next on the Oakland County Megacast. You're watching and listening to us on a family of TV and radio stations and other media outlets. Ronnie and I will return after this quick break.
Hi, I'm Dr. Faust, the medical director for the Oakland County Health Division. The most important thing you can do to prevent the spread of illness is to wash your hands thoroughly and often. Follow these 6 easy steps every time you wash your hands. Step 1, turn on the sink and wet your hands with warm water. Step 2, apply soap to your hands and lather between your fingers, under your nails, and the front and back of your hands and wrists. Step 3, wash your hands by scrubbing them together for at least 20 seconds. Step 4, rinse your hands with warm, clean water. And step 5, dry your hands with a clean cloth towel, a paper towel, or hot air blow dryer. If you're using a cloth towel, make sure to change it often. For handheld faucets, turn off the water using a paper towel instead of your bare hand. Step 6, if you're using a paper towel, throw it away. Practice healthy habits like washing your hands after coughing or sneezing into them to keep you and others healthy. Go to oakgov.com/health or call Nurse on Call at 1-800-848-5533 to learn more.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe, alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, today, as always, 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, and Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Join us on the program today. We're on the Facebook page of the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. We thank Suzanne, Vito, and the entire team at the Chamber of Commerce in West Bloomfield for joining us on today's edition of the Oakland County Megacast. The Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, our Facebook partner on today's program. We're on each and every day during the work week, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, Monday through Friday, bringing you the latest news and information about the COVID-19 pandemic as it continues to have an impact in all areas of life, especially as we're approaching the fall, the education of our kids. And joining us now to talk about how she's helping families and children prepare for the school year and learn during this, again, very different learning format in the fall. We're pleased to be joined once again by Kimberly Smith. She is the owner of Mathnasium. Kimberly, thank you for being with us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on again since we last spoke. How have you been? How's your team at Mathnasium?
We have been well. We have been focusing on making sure that our students are getting prepared for the fall, preparing them over the summer. Some of them have been coming throughout the summer as well because, as you know, schools ended abruptly in March and transitioned to an online program for the students. But a lot of parents felt that their kids were a little bit disadvantaged with that and wanted to make sure they were on track. So that's what we've been doing. So our staff has been doing a great job working with the students online. And then we have recently transitioned and started to allow some of our families to safely come back into the center for face-to-face instruction.
Kimberly, as we came into the pandemic, your business obviously had to shift and rework things. Schools did also rework things very quickly to continue education. And it was a different time in March, transitioning kids and helping kids be tutored and continue learning outside of the classroom in that context then. The schools have learned a lot since then. I'm sure you've learned a lot since then also about more effective methods. What has changed at Mathnasium in terms of your approach in teaching and tutoring these kids, knowing what they're up against in the fall semester?
I think, the key to it all is to stay very in tune with how the kids are doing. So over the time period of learning that we needed to stay very informed from the instructors as far as how their sessions were going. Our instructors were providing feedback after every session. And then if we saw that there were any concerns with students staying engaged or not necessarily picking up the material as well as we'd like, we would work together and partner with the families and let them know that so that we can make sure that the environment was working for them, what types of improvements we could put in place to make sure that the student was getting the most out of the experience they were having.
And Kimberly, can you talk about some of those improvements? Because math is so different than English or history where you can read something and it's so much more easily understood. Math is a step-by-step process. So what are some of those improvements? And if a parent can't afford a tutor, what can they do to help their student?
Well, some of the improvements I would say is, maybe assessing the students more often to ensure that they are achieving mastery of the content that we're teaching. Because of the medium of doing it over a computer or virtually, sometimes you may feel like a connection is being lost. And so we want to make sure that we are indeed moving and progressing the student forward, and to be able to measure that a bit more frequently gives us better assurance that a student is prepared, or if we need to go back and review and ensure that the message and the student is gathering the knowledge and holding that foundation so that they can progress to the next level or the next content subject area. So I think that for us at Mathnasium, we felt that as long as we stay in tune with how the student is doing with the material, we can help them ensure that they are mastering the content level.
Kimberly Smith with us. She is the owner of Mathnasium, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. So Kimberly, as we're going through the COVID-19 pandemic, we hit the summer months. School did end abruptly and ended a little bit earlier for in-person, and then ended earlier overall when everything went virtual. That gave a little more time for what is commonly referred to as the summer slide. What has your team been doing with the students that you are tutoring, and what advice do you have for parents as they're preparing to return their kids to school in the coming weeks to prevent or to lessen the burden of the summer slide on what they may have lost as their kids are going back to school?
Great question. So what we've been offering is a free assessment for the families so that parents can know exactly where their students are. And I think that is the key in determining what types of losses a student might have, what types of opportunities that they have for growth and improvement, is to really have a good understanding of where their student is with their math skills, and to have a detailed and data-driven approach to what concepts we need to begin to focus on with students. So we can prioritize those things, ensure that we're coupling that with what does a student need to know as a priority as they get ready for the fall. So having an understanding of a student's skill set is a great way to put together a individualized, a customized learning plan for each student so that we are focusing in on their individual unique needs. And so that's how our program is structured anyway, and it allows us to really be able to hone in on that specific student themselves.
Kimberly Smith with us. She is the owner of Mathnasium, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Kimberly, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but math is such a tough thing for some kids to grasp because certain concepts they need a lot of, they're very touch and go with their teacher, with their tutor, whatever the case may be, and sometimes that in-person ability to work through things step by step is what helps put them over the edge and grasp a concept. It's different learning in every sense virtually over the web. What challenges does that present in bridging that gap with the kids, and how do you work through that, and how should they work through that as they're going back to school now? And a lot of them are going to be learning, at least at the high school level, higher math forms virtually.
Well, I think the key is to remain positive, and to not look at the medium that we have to use at this point because of the pandemic as a negative thing. So we need to encourage our kids that they can still learn. And, even though some of the content material might be a bit challenging, for us, and what I always tell my instructors, that it is about more than just the math. It is about developing a personal relationship with the student, getting to know their learning style and presenting the material in a way that makes sense to them. And if you're reading from the student that they're not quite understanding, you can read that by their facial expressions. You can read that by, the body language, and you can read that through, questioning, asking them to explain things back to you so that you can get a good understanding of whether or not they are really grasping the concepts. So with that in mind, getting to know the student and their learning style and transitioning the way that you're presenting the material to the student is a very effective way of making sure that you're getting across to them no matter what medium that you choose. That's what, most teachers do in the classroom, when they're face to face. So you have to get to know your students. And when you know them, you can better provide a level of teaching that meets their needs where they are. And so that's where we focus in Mathnasium, is to get to know our students, work towards building up their confidence and keeping them positive about the concepts that they're learning, as opposed to, the fear that they might be feeling at the time. So once they feel comfortable with us, they're more apt to ask questions and to seek out more information about a particular concept that they're learning.
Okay, Kimberly. So math is a little bit different today than when a lot of the parents took math when they were in school. There's this new style of learning math. So if parents are stuck being the teachers trying to help their kids, what advice do you give to parents, and could they actually be setting their kids back by confusing them with the old math versus new math?
I will be honest with you that probably 98% of the parents that come in to see me, share that, they're concerned about, new math. And I try to help them understand that math is still math. And if you are concerned about a particular concept that you're working on with your student, it's important to not necessarily share with them that, oh, I don't know how to do this new math, or to share any level of, a lack of confidence. There's so many resources out there. We're here to help you. There's resources online. And if you're not sure, and this is not a particular subject that you're confident with, then seek us out. We are familiar with the different styles of, or the different curriculum that exists in the districts in the area. And we are familiar because we work with a lot of students with the same homework. They have the same types of, testing and the teachers in the area. So we are knowledgeable enough. We're all strong math individuals and can identify, okay, what particular method is being used for this style or this particular curriculum, so that we can take the time to break it down to the families or to the students. So, I know that there are families out there that may not be able to, always afford, having a resource. But there's some opportunities to look certain things up online. YouTube is a great tool to use and see if you can identify a similar method so that you can help your student at home.
How do you make math exciting?
Well, I think number one is you have to make sure that you have instructors that are engaging. And it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, is to find a math person that has a strong personality. But that is what I look for when I am looking for instructors, so that they can pretty much jump into their particular environment, through the online medium, and still pull the student in. A lot of kids, math is not their most natural, math or natural subject. And so you have to try to find a way to connect either the math subject or connect it to something that they're interested in. So you have to be very creative. You have to be a problem solver, a critical thinker when you're dealing with every individual student. And I think the other very important aspect of this is that you have to show or actually seriously care about the student. And, kids are really, really, they're in tune to how a person, connects with them. And so we have to make sure that connection occurs. And when that happens, so much can happen. Like the light bulb comes on and they just enjoy spending the time with that individual. So very, very important to make sure that we have instructors that are very strong personalities and can share math in a fun way.
Kimberly Smith with us. She is the owner of Mathnasium, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Kimberly, just a few more minutes with you here on the show today. What as we approach going back to school in a couple of weeks, and it's going to be different for various school districts when they go back and in what capacity that they go back. But with that being the case, what is your biggest piece of advice for parents as we're approaching those dates and they're getting their kids prepared to learn once again? And what are your biggest pieces of advice for students as they're preparing for returning to learning?
Great question. I'm going to answer this because I'm a mom as well. And I had to also take a look at myself and how I was approaching the fall for my two sons. Number one, we have to all be very positive. When we as parents are, talking about the different ways that we're having to approach the fall and going back to school, our students are listening to us. And if we are telling them and sharing that we're going to make the most out of this situation, it's of course not the best situation to go back to school, but we are going to still need to be successful with the method that our school districts are to us to teach hard. Administrator districts have worked so hard since March to make sure that our kids are going to receive the very best instruction that they can receive, regardless of how they're going to be, have to present it. But if we as families approach this in a very positive way, the parents and the students, then, we can start out, in a way that makes this in the best situation for each family and each student. And I think as parents, we need to make sure that we pay very close attention to our students and to, look at what type of environment they are in for the schooling and making sure they have the least amount of distractions, that they, to keep them focused. And, we should also make sure that we, partner with, other families or partner with resources to fill in any gaps that might be surfacing as the kids are learning in this environment.
Kimberly, is there anything else that would be interesting for us to know? Anything else that you believe is important for families and students to know as we go forward?
Well, I am a big proponent of knowing your student. So if you are not sure where your students' math skills are, reach out to us. I have a center in West Bloomfield, I have a center in Birmingham, and a center in Plymouth Canton. You can reach out to us, and I have no issue assessing your child. And if this is a situation where you feel comfortable allowing us to partner with you to help your student, navigate this this environment that they're going to be learning in, certainly reach out. We're available to provide any support that we can for this situation that our families are in right now.
Well, Kimberly, we thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful day.
You as well. Appreciate it. Kimberly Smith, the owner of Mathnasium, with us on the Oakland County Megacast, one of many on the front lines in the education side of things as we're preparing our kids to go back to school. And it's really tough to avoid the summer slide during a pandemic where everyone's stuck at home and you're trying to find things to do, and often you're not turning to learning in that case. And then on top of that, all the variables that remain in place for learning in the fall makes it that much more complicated, and having people in the community and resources available such as Kimberly for families that can have them, or at least advice from those individuals for families that are battling through this without extra help on the outside is so valuable right now.
It's good to have this resource. Math is one of those subjects. Kids tend to grasp it or they don't. And so it's one of the ones, especially when they're young, to try to be able to connect them to the world of math and make it exciting. And we are seeing this over and over where now parents are having to be a teacher along with parenting. And when you're not strong in a certain subject, it can do some damage, but that's one of the biggest things you hear. I know we went through it with my nephew when he was young, and it was like, what do you mean? I don't know this new math. And we were fortunate to have, my brother-in-law is a math teacher, so he could always come over and help him with his homework. So this is a big issue for parents going forward if we continue to remote learn. And it's a financial drain and strain for some of these parents, and they're trying to struggle to find ways to get these additional resources for their kids. It's good to have them in our neighborhood, in our backyard, to be able to reach out to, but just like she said, remember there are so many other resources. YouTube really is amazing. Obviously, you have to vet whoever is putting out the information there, because, even Tyler, I've tried to learn, Photoshop and things of that nature, and the array of people posting is very wide. So you want to make sure that you get someone that connects with your child and is really teaching them something as well. But YouTube is a good resource as well.
Yeah, and one of the key points that Kimberly Smith made in that interview was saying that one of the main factors in teaching kids these subjects and tutoring these kids, and for parents, and one of the main factors that she says is going to be at play for parents that continue to help their kids learn, is figuring out how to learn based on how the child's learning style, how to teach based on the child's learning style. So you also, when you're going to tutorials and you're going to outside resources, you have to not only look for reputable resources for that subject matter, but also for people that are presenting it in a way that is helping your kids.
Because we know math people, sometimes technical type people, don't have vibrant personalities. So when you are teaching remotely, it makes it even harder for that personality or that message sometimes to get through the screen and reach that child in a way that they can understand. So when you have people with bigger personalities, it's easier sometimes for the kids to be able to follow along. And also for those types of people to be able to really monitor and check in with each of the individual students, because you're not in a classroom, you're on a screen. And if you're pulling the screen up for them to be able to follow along, it would be hard to try to check in on so many different kids at one time via Zoom versus in a classroom setting.
It's going to be a really interesting fall, a really tough fall, I think, for a lot of kids and parents as they continue their education online, and some in person and some hybrid. But these continue to be really different and unique times to be learning in school and outside of school for families all throughout our local area, and resources like Mathnasium through Kimberly Smith, our second guest there, are certainly going to continue to be a lot more of a necessity in our communities going forward. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll check in with Erica Jones in the field, go over today's top headlines, and continue with more great guests in the second hour of our show. You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie and I will return after this break.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards. Back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart. Keep wearing a mask in public. And if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus. Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/contain-COVID. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM, our flagship TV and radio stations. On the Megacast network of community television, radio, and other media outlets. In addition, today, as always, we're on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff. In addition, we are on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. And today, our Facebook partner is the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. We thank Suzanne Levine, Vito Kukuru, the entire team over at the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce for joining us today via Facebook Live on the show. Our Facebook partner each and every day from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. We have a different Facebook partner, and we're here live with you each and every day, bringing you the latest news and information about the COVID-19 pandemic as it continues to impact a variety of different businesses, including learning and including broadcasting. And our next guest has a little bit of involvement in both of those. She is a professor at Oakland and Wayne State Universities in broadcasting. She joins us now in the Oakland County Megacast. Her name is Lena Antoon. Thank you for being with us today, Lena.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. How are you? How have you been during the pandemic?
You know what? I've been just fine. I adapted really quickly. So it was just a matter of transferring everything from being in person to basically being remote. And so that's nothing new. It's an ever-changing lifestyle. And that's exactly what I've been doing, not with just myself, but with my students as well.
So, Lena, you teach broadcasting, and we've had other professors on that are in that teach in the broadcasting professions, and they've had their own struggles with this, and they've had their own pivots they've had to make. Broadcasting, in so many senses, is such a hands-on field and such a hands-on craft to master. How do you tailor that to being virtual when a lot of this is hands-on and learning with different pieces of equipment and different processes that usually goes on best in person in these labs?
Well, the first thing that I tell them is that change is ever consistent, and so is technology. So if you walk in as a freshman, learning one type of technology, learning one type of software, the difference is that it's going to change more than likely when you get out in college. Now, it has already changed in terms of just working remotely. Viewers and listeners, and I tell them this all the time, are seeing and hearing things regularly to them, but from behind the scenes, the new normal has changed. Like 75% of all of our work environment is now done remotely. So whether you're a producer from a creative standpoint, and that means just writing and producing, whether it's television or radio, it's all going to be done out of the courtesy of your own home. But if you have to go outside and you have to use the technology, which there is about 25% that actually do that, then what you do is you adapt to the scene, you adapt to the social distancing, you adapt to the technology. And a lot of the technology, even for myself, because I'm a radio announcer, I do everything out of the house. It was by the seat of my pants within a few hours. I literally had to go and buy a new laptop. And that's because my old laptop was not adaptable to the current software that we had at the business. And that's what I continue to tell my kids. You're going to constantly adapt. What you have to be willing to do is to change with that technology once it's given to you. Even interviews like we're doing right now is via Zoom. You can either social distance or you can Zoom. Whatever the case is, you can always adapt. And I try and give them that silver lining so that way they understand that this isn't necessarily permanent, but it's something to add into your arsenal, because what that does is it makes you more marketable once you get out into so-and-so, quote unquote, the real world.
Lena Antoon with us. She's a professor in broadcasting at both Oakland University and Wayne State University. And Lena, as you talk about adaptability, it used to be in the broadcasting profession that you were centered on one or maybe a few different things. If you were a producer, you were a producer. If you were a journalist and you were a reporter, you were a reporter. If you were a director, you were a director. Nowadays, you kind of have to be able, even before the pandemic, to do a little bit of everything in this industry, and that's even more the case now with the pandemic. How does that change how you teach your students and how you encourage them to be learners as they're emerging in this industry?
Well, what I don't want them to do, and I tell them this all the time, is do as I say, not as I do. And the reason why I say that is because when I started in this business, and I'm not going to give you how many decades ago, we were also focused on just learning one specific area. If I were to become a reporter, I just became a reporter. I didn't know the camera. I didn't know how to direct. I didn't know how to shoot. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to do anything. Within about 10 years, the technology started to change. Not only did we start going virtual, but of course, we had to start putting on many hats. And so I tell my kids, or I tell my students, I should say, that learn other aspects, because what's going to happen is that particular job that you like, that you love, that you're passionate about may not be there in about 10 years. So what you're going to have to do is reinvent yourself. And so you might as well have as much of those tools as you possibly can. So learn the new software and adapt to it, which is exactly what I had to do. About 10 years ago, I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to edit film. I didn't know how to edit video. I didn't even know how to edit audio. And so I was forced to do so because of the job market that it was constantly adapting to. So I learned not only how to edit one software, but that taught me how to edit several different types of softwares. They're very similar in nature. So it's just a matter of, okay, what are you more likely to respond to? And that way you just go from that point forward. And it's the same with video cameras. It's the same with software when it comes to video editing as well. And it's just a matter of figuring it out. And even like social influencers and YouTubers and whatever the case is, they've already adapted. You've already got podcasters that have already adapted. The software and the equipment and the gear that's in audio is already there. It's just a matter of adaptability. You can take that stuff to your home. You can start working on it. You're given the tools by the professor, and you just continue to learn and adapt to it as the times continue to change. And that's exactly what I tell them to do.
So speaking of changing, the whole news world has changed as well. We're seeing a lot of newspapers fold up, and we are seeing other avenues bloom, really. Like you mentioned, there are a lot of influencers, and social media is changing the way we operate and how news gets out to the public. What advice are you giving to the young students about how the whole world of journalism is changing?
Just to be very consistent and be very positive and have an open mind to when it comes to adaptability and consistency. The good thing about the students is that they're natives to this, so they can easily pick up something, or they've already picked it up years before I've even taught anything to them, especially when it comes to YouTubers and podcasters. Podcasters came into effect, approximately 10 years ago, maybe even less than that. And so I can have a host, I can be here in Detroit, and my host can be in Arizona, and you would never be the wiser. And the same thing goes when it comes to producing and out on the field. It's just a matter of keep a positive attitude, and that the technology and the landscape is going to be changing. But the thing is that we're just now at least thinking in terms of the audience that this is just happening when it's been happening. Technology and adaptability has been going on. It's just a matter of, okay, let's just get up to speed and let's continue to move forward, because this pandemic shows us what our strengths can be, and what may not be necessarily our strengths, we can definitely build on. And that's what I tell the students to do. Being remote shouldn't be a negative. The only thing about it is the fact that we're not face to face, but that doesn't mean it's not going to change. That landscape isn't going to change in the next 6 months or whatever the case is, whatever that new normal is going to be. But right now, let's work with what we have right now, and let's move forward, and let's make it the best product, whether it's audio, whether it's video, whether it's podcasting, whether it's being a YouTuber, whatever the case may be. You just work with the tools that you have, and you continue to adapt and move forward, and have a positive hat, if you will, when you move forward with that.
So we know a lot of schools are still trying to finalize their back to school fall plans. Do you plan on being in the classroom? Are you comfortable with being in the classroom? And how will you address students who want to be completely remote?
So that's not necessarily a hard question. It's just a matter of working with the students. Right now, Wayne State's about to go for full virtual all over again. And I teach public speaking there. And so that's really a face-to-face, a particular medium. And that's kind of hard to do every once in a blue moon when it comes to doing it virtual. But I have done half of it on a hybrid level, which means that I will take a class of 32 students and we split them up, excuse me. And then what we do is 16 will come into a class on one day of the week, the other 16 will come into the class the second day of the week. And so we'll end up spacing them out. But right now, even that hybrids have turned virtual. So what I end up telling the kids is, by the way, what I want you to do is, for the most part, do your work as you were always going to do it. What I tend on doing is being more accountable for them, and not just that, but being there for them. So instead of having my lecture face to face with them, I'll take the tools that I have, whether it's a Zoom, whether it's a Google Hangout, or even whatever the tools that the university gives us, depending on what they have, whether it's a Blackboard, whether it's Canvas, they've got video conferencing. So instead of being in that classroom, we'll video everything in. And if not, then I will video conference myself and upload it. So that's one way, at least, for me to stay connected to them. So that way, at least they have a face-to-face. From that point forward, that's when I go to them and say, listen, we need to, at the very least, think about time management, because online work tends to make all of us, not all of us, but some of us slack off, especially with the incoming freshmen. Time management is a huge deal, especially if you're just left to your devices. So what I want them to do is, hey, reach out to me. I'll end up setting up meetings with them, whether it's Zoom or phone call, whatever the case is. So that way, at least we're in constant contact with one another. And I will still end up giving them the feedback that they need and that they deserve. So that way, when the landscape changes again, they've got the tools and they're able to do what they need to do, especially when it comes to public speaking, because it's such a different dynamic than using video production or television production or even radio production. Public speaking is very different. It should be done face to face, but given the circumstances, let's work with what we have, and let's make sure, at least from a time management standpoint, that we can do the work and we can be the best that we can be when we get into at least the next semester, because we're taking this semester by semester as opposed to just an entire full year.
So, Lena, I know you have a very diverse resume, and speaking of public speaking, you also do training for executives and people outside of just a classroom. What advice do you give them on having to give conferences or speak with employees through the internet or virtually versus in person?
Look at it from a face-to-face standpoint. You put your best foot forward, and granted, you're not going to necessarily see the faces, but work towards that and practice as much as you possibly can. Stand up, use your diction, use your hands, because that alone is another language and another delivery tool that you can have. So that way you can continue to engage with your audience. And that way, whatever message that you have when it comes to a meeting, when it comes to a Zoom call with 20 or 30 other people, at least they will stay not only like-minded, but they will at least stay engaged with you and at least listen to what you need to say. Because this virtual thing sometimes tends us to slack off. That means put on your best shirt, put on your best shoes, move forward, so that way, at the very least, you will feel good about the situation, and that way you can continue. And the good thing about virtual at the moment is that you can have your cue cards off to the side and know what you want to say. So that way, if you feel like you're going to flub, you're not going to. And if you do, pick yourself back up. It's the same exact thing. Do not worry about the situation. Just put a smile on your face and continue to do what you are meant to do, what you can do. So that way, you don't have to think of it as a virtual. Just use it right now. So that way, when you get out there with a bigger audience, you can be so much better than what you possibly can think of.
Lena Antoon with us. She's a professor of broadcasting at Oakland and Wayne State University, with us on the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations, including 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, West Bloomfield, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills, a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District. So, Lena, we talked about earlier on how it can be difficult possibly for students to learn the hands-on nature of broadcasting without being in person, but there's so much opportunity to get the full scope of creating a broadcast when you are in a virtual setting and you have to have everything set on your end perfectly, whether it be lighting, whether it be the cameras, whether it be the audio, whatever the case may be. And there's opportunity there, I would presume, for presenting yourself and presenting your content still virtually to fulfill what you're learning in these classes.
Oh, absolutely. I thought it was really funny that I didn't think that a television studio would go basically dead and that everyone started doing everything out of their homes. But when it did, and that's what I look to when I see that, if you're doing a television production, you can use so much as your camera. You can use your laptop, you can order your lighting from Amazon, whatever the case is. You can have an entire studio built inside your bedroom for all you know. You just need like possibly a little bit more aesthetically pleasing background than what you would have normally. And between that and then even the audio production is very, very cheap in terms of the software. And a lot of it for my students is free. And if not, then they can get something at a student rate, depending on what they like. So all I have to do is just give them the assignment and the tools and let them be creative in their own bedroom and go back and forth when it comes to what they need to, in terms of grading. But we've seen it happen on TV and even on radio. If I wake up at 5 a.m, I kind of roll out of bed when it comes to just doing my radio show or doing my traffic reports and doing my weather reports. But at the same exact time, I have the software that's capable that it sounds seamless. And that's another thing that I tell them. It's like, you have all of this equipment, you have all of this gear, you have all of these softwares, and you're natives to it. Use it to your advantage and start, working with it and making it look as good as you possibly want it to be, with the lighting, with the laptop, with your iPhone or whatever the case that you're using when it comes to your smartphone. So yeah, it can all be done. It's just at their fingertips. And I let them know that you guys are natives to it. Work with it. You're going to have the best time with it.
We tend to get creativity through people. They spark new thoughts, new ideas, you feed off of other people. So when you can't have that in person, how do you encourage your students to foster that part of the creativity process?
I always give them my point of view, or I always give them, I should say, my own personal experience, because I can easily pick up a line here or there, listen to someone saying something off of a teleprompter, or just giving their own words, and it sounds so much better, or at least I think it sounds better than what I would have said. So I constantly look to other people. If I can't be in the classroom, then I will look to the professionals and see what they're doing, because typically speaking, that's exactly where I get my inspiration from, is from the professionals who I believe are better than I am, or at least, and I want to keep that mindset, so that way it gives me the drive to be a better person, or at least a better broadcaster. Now, when it comes to listening to other people's work within your class, I'll end up uploading everything and saying, here's this and here's that. What can you take from there? And that's when those discussions kick in, those online discussions, if you will, from my students. When it came to public speaking, sometimes they think that they had it down, or that maybe they were missing some sort of an element. And what happens is I constantly upload different types of public speakers. And so I would send either local or international speakers, and I would upload them into our Canvas or whatever the software that the school has. And I said, what can you take away from that? And tell me what is it that maybe that inspires you to at least learn from that. And then they'll give me the examples. And when that happens, then they actually start to move forward and they think about it. And the same thing goes when it comes to audio and when it comes to visuals. They will look at other people's work. I will give them other people's work, or I will have them look out and take other assignments and do other people's work, so that way it inspires them to maybe get that creative spark going, so that way they can do not only just better assignments, but they can actually take that with them and further out of the classroom and years to come, hopefully.
Lena Antoon with us, professor of broadcasting at Oakland and Wayne State University, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Lena, just another couple minutes with you. Any lasting advice as we're approaching the fall semester for students that are coming back to continue their broadcasting education, or for those who are coming in as they're approaching this unique new way of learning?
Just think of it as a different landscape, and that the good news is that you're young, and that not only what you learn now can be a little bit different, by the time you graduate. So just take the tools that you're going through right now and just adapt to it, because again, that landscape is going to change come January, come next September, whatever the case is. And so I always tell them, especially in this world of broadcasting and technology or whatever the case is, whatever you want to go to, always remember that everything is like change is consistent. And that old adage, I take it not only with me, but I tell that to the students, is that change is always consistent. And not just that, but be open to other ideas, be open to other avenues, be open to other professions. But also take what you get from not just my classroom, but all the other classrooms that you go to, whether it's virtual, whether it's hybrid, whether it's face-to-face. Take those tools and use them and adapt them to your next profession, because there's going to be, in this broadcasting world, you will play many hats. I started out one way. I'm already on my third career, let's just say, on my third career link. So that's what I tell them to do, is that change is consistent, and that you have to be open to adaptability. And with them being natives to technology, it just opens up a whole new world for them, and they should just marinate on that and then just move forward, because it's going to change, and they're going to pick up where the other person left off, if not more.
Well, Lena, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Lena Antoon, professor of broadcasting at Oakland and Wayne State University, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Appreciate having her on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll check in with Erica Jones out in the field, and then we'll talk about coffee and service to many members of our community as well. The Oakland County Megacast continues after this break. Ronnie and I will return. You are watching and listening to us on a family of community television, radio, and other media outlets.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
As rivals, we don't always see eye to eye.
Like who scored the best recruits?
Who's gonna be who?
And whether we wear green or blue.
But one thing we can all agree on to help stop the spread of COVID-19.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask. Wear a mask.
The ball's in your court, Michigan.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of community television and radio stations. I'm Tyler Keefe, joined by Ronnie Dahl each and every day here in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, we are on 88.1 WBFH, the Biff, and Birmingham area municipal access. It's really easy if you're watching us on TV. Whether you're watching us in West Bloomfield, Kegel Harbor, Orchard Lake, or Sylvan Lake on Civic Center TV, or on Birmingham area municipal access in Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and the Village of Franklin, both TV channels on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. In addition, we're online in high definition on civiccentertv.com and on the Facebook page of the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce today. We appreciate having them on. We also have Erica Jones out in the field as Oakland County puts more emphasis on its testing sites, sending results into the county so they can send it to the state as promptly as possible. Erica Jones checks in now from a testing location. Erica, how are things today?
Hi, Hi, I'm here at the Oakland County Health Division in Southfield, where they are doing drive-up testing. And I expected there to be a lot more people here this morning. There are not that many people, as you can see behind me. There are the tents where you can easily just drive up and get tested. Not a long line. The testing is here on Mondays and Wednesdays. And Oakland County recently set out a press release about how testing centers need to be sharing their results promptly because we need more accurate information. And there are so many backups in labs with delayed testing results. And I even went this Friday to a rapid testing location where normally they're able to give you the results within 10 minutes. And I had to wait about 45 minutes just because they're so backed up with testing, but they are still available to come get tested. And there's just a huge emphasis from the government about testing locations needing to give their results immediately once they have them because the places are so backed up now. And labs need to be making testing more priority, we're seeing, because they're not getting the results as soon as they need to be, which is very difficult because when you get tested and then you get your results 5 days later, you could have contracted the virus within those 5 days. So by the time you get your results saying you're negative, you could have gotten it by then and really not been negative because as we talked about before, testing is really just a moment in time, which makes it very challenging.
Erica, any other news from out in the field today?
No, not much other news. Just like I said, not very busy. You can pull up here from 9 to 5. They're open for testing. Anyone over the age of 18, and you can come get tested. Don't need to get out of your car. Super simple. Like I said, I was just tested the other day, and it's super easy.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that report. Erica Jones out in the field at the Oakland County Health Division's location, one of their many testing sites for COVID-19. You can find more information on testing sites and get yourself an appointment to get tested on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. If you click directly on our Oakland County link, it will take you to Oakland County's COVID-19 informational page, which has information about COVID-19 testing sites, and the Nurse on Call hotline so that you can set up an appointment to get tested for the coronavirus through Oakland County. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about the coffee business and how it's been impacted by COVID-19. That and more coming up. You are watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie and I will return after this quick break.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart, keep wearing a mask in public, and if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus. Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, as always, we're on 88.1 WBFH, the Biff and Birmingham area municipal access all throughout the Oakland County area. In addition, today we are joined on Facebook Live by the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, and appreciate Suzanne Levine, Vito Kukuru, and that entire team over at the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber for joining us today on this edition of the Oakland County Megacast. If you're just tuning in on Facebook Live from the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce's page, welcome. We appreciate you tuning in. You can listen to us and watch us each and every day from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on our family of TV, radio, and other media outlets. Find more information on civiccentertv.com/megacast and find more news about COVID-19 and information about COVID-19 on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Well, businesses all throughout the area, all throughout the state of Michigan and the country have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. That includes one local business that is centered on coffee. And we are pleased to be joined now by the president and director of coffee and roasting operations at Desert Oasis Coffee Roasters. We're pleased to be joined by Nathan Hammoud. Nathan, thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely.
Appreciate having you on. How are you? How's your team at Desert Oasis Coffee Roasters?
We're hanging in there. Obviously, it's very unprecedented times, but our focus largely has really just been to try and stay as adaptive and agile as we possibly can to really kind of make sure that we're following every regulation and guideline as carefully as possible. And at the start of the shutdowns, we had a lot of new news coming out, every couple days even, right? So just kind of trying to keep ourselves educated on everything that was happening to make sure that we were doing the best for our staff and our customers and trying to just sort of stay adaptive.
Nathan, every business had to make a variety of pivots or changes over the course of the pandemic to adjust to how things were going. What were some of the pivots or changes that were made by your company, and what kind of impact did that have on your business's ability to remain open and functioning?
Sure. Yeah. So, before the shutdowns, our focus was, of course, the first focus being sanitation and what we were doing to keep customers safe. But as we saw, that there was more of a response needed, and as there were the shutdowns, we started to, of course, follow those guidelines, move to doing all carry out. Our pivot there being that we started doing curbside service. We started doing, ordering over the phone. We focused more on our online sales. So you could buy bags of coffee, brewing gear, all sorts of things like that online. We put out some little how-to videos on how to brew really great coffee at home to sort of direct more people to be able to get their Desert Oasis coffee that way. We also started bottling some of our drinks so that you'd be able to buy, a week's worth of lattes by just stopping in or doing a curbside order, taking it to go, and having a few drinks for the next few days or so.
Nathan, I was obsessed with the show Dangerous Grounds on the Travel Channel that showed the process of actually having to buy coffee and get the grounds from the farmers. How has this impacted your supply chain?
Sure. So we work with a lot of really great importers and have really great relationships with those importers that do a lot of what you would have seen, Todd Carmichael do on that show. It has affected supply chain, honestly, in a lot of sort of unpredictable ways, right? Certain origins are affected and certain origins are not. Some origins are still able to have, their teams working and still are able to meet their harvest seasons and be able to still go through the processing and exporting. In the States here, warehousing and all that type of stuff, we're just seeing some delays and stuff like that, and just kind of trying to navigate it as we can.
Nathan, you talked earlier about how your company made some tutorial videos about making good coffee at home and so on. Through this process, a lot of businesses have had to up their online presence or begin to have an online presence altogether just to be able to survive and do things like curbside and delivery and online ordering and so on and so forth. How critical has it been for your business to increase its online presence over the course of the pandemic, and what effect has that had on your business?
Sure. I think it was very critical, particularly early on in the shutdowns. For that first few weeks, online sales were, most of what we had. So being able to quickly drive more traffic to our website and try to up our web presence as far as that was a huge factor. We increased, the number of times we do shipping in a given week, all that type of stuff. Curbside orders were pretty big for us. We did that somewhat low tech though. We did it, just over the phone, so it was call in, and it worked pretty well. But those having those presences were particularly important in the first bit in trying to get that up very quickly and efficiently.
And keeping a positive attitude, you had said, was also something that was so important to your business culture as you were going through the trials and tribulations of the COVID-19 pandemic. How much of an impact has that mindset had on the longevity of your business throughout this, when many businesses have been going through tough times due to the pandemic?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's so much of it, right? It's, there's only so much that we can control, right? And there's so much that I think we needed to become okay with just not knowing and trying to do the most we can to stay current on all the things that we needed to be on top of. I think mindset was really a very important part of the approach. I don't believe that our response in any way was, tone deaf. It's certainly not that we weren't aware of the issues that we were going to be experiencing and that were happening, but it was about, trying to figure out how we make it happen, how we do it.
So one of the things that I would imagine that would impact this even more greatly for you and your family is that this is a family business. Was there an additional stress on all of you financially to try to recover from this? What did you learn going forward?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there was certainly, financial stress and burden and fear in general, right, as what things were going to look like. Of course, some of the first things we did were just kind of start figuring out what our cash flow needed to look like as a company. And then on personal fronts, we just sort of needed to do whatever we could to make that happen, right? Our goal was to make sure that our staff felt, the weight of this as little as possible. And that meant, if we needed to take any more of that on, if we needed to figure out new ways of approaching issues, that we would. So, I mean, I think largely, honestly, just focusing on the agility of our plans, I think was one of the largest takeaways.
So in the middle of all of this, as we're all starting to recover, now there's this coin shortage going on. Are you guys experiencing that at all, or are you finding most people now do just pay digitally?
Yeah, we are experiencing it for sure, because we still do cash engines. We have to manage them very carefully. We sanitize our point of sale system in between every transaction, particularly if it's a cash transaction, because there's obviously a lot more brought into that equation. But largely, digital has in recent years become a much more prevalent payment method. Right? It's much more of our business for sure. Which has helped. So our need for coins is not nearly as high as it would have been in previous years. So it hasn't been too much of a problem, but we are feeling it for sure.
Nathan, just a few more minutes with you. Anything else that you'd like our audience to know about your company, about what you're doing over the course of the pandemic, or anything else that would be important for us to know?
Absolutely. I mean, I hope, we can do our best to really safely, do what we do. And I hope, we can instill some confidence in the consumer that we are doing everything we can on our end to make sure that it's a safe experience, so that people can still be able to get their coffee and have that sort of moment of normalcy in their day, while still adhering very strictly to social distancing guidelines and working to stop the spread of the virus.
A great cup of coffee is definitely a nice comfort during all of this pandemic. Quickly before we let you leave, if people are not familiar with your locations, where are you and what are your hours?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a location in Detroit, in Capitol Park, in Rochester, right in downtown Rochester, and right down in downtown Royal Oak. We're operating mostly now at pretty close to our full operation hours. We were sort of moving them around a lot as we had staffing and figuring out what our hours would be, but we're mostly fully back in terms of hours.
Nathan Hamoud with us, the President and Director of Coffee and Roasting Operations at Desert Oasis Coffee Roasters. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Nathan Hamoud with us on the Oakland County Megacast, as businesses, even our local coffee shops, are impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and keeping a positive attitude and taking the steps that you can and you are in control of during the pandemic to keep your business alive and hopefully thriving. It's good to hear that that's being done, at least by one business in our local area.
If you are a coffee drinker during this pandemic, a great cup of coffee was such a comfort, because you were able to forget everything else that was going on and just start your day with a cup of coffee that didn't come out of your Keurig, even though I like mine, but still it doesn't matter how many things I buy or what I do at home. When I make coffee at home, it never tastes as good as when it comes from a local shop, and even more so the mom and pop shops, because there is such an art to making a great cup of coffee. So we're hoping that they survive and they continue to do a great job and offer this incredible service to the community.
Absolutely, and we thank Nathan Hamoud, the President and Director of Coffee and Roasting Operations from Desert Oasis Coffee Roasters, for being with us on today's program. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll speak with the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Services of Metropolitan Detroit. That coming up on the Oakland County Megacast. You're watching and listening to us on our family of community television, radio, and other media outlets. Ronnie and I will return after this break.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonay Khaldun. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft with Ronnie Doll in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. We're also on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, and Birmingham Area Municipal Access each and every day here on the Oakland County Megacast from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, Monday through Friday, with replays in the afternoons, evenings, and over the weekends. And we thank you for tuning in. Whether you're tuning into our live show or watching us on demand on civiccentertv.com/megacast. If you go to our page, civiccentertv.com, and click on Megacast at the top of your screen, you will find more information on our partnering TV and radio stations, as well as access to our on-demand and full episodes, full interviews, and short clips. So no matter if you're looking for one specific conversation, full episodes that you missed while you were going about your day, or you don't have a lot of time but you want to get the most important information from each and every show, you can do that. civiccentertv.com/megacast. In addition, you can fill out our form on this page and suggest any topics to cover or people potentially to speak to, and we appreciate hearing from you. civiccentertv.com/megacast as we continue to cover the coronavirus and its impact on our community. It includes industries, and it includes businesses, and it includes organizations that provide services to our community, much like Jewish Family Service of Metropolitan Detroit. We're pleased to be joined now by their Chief Executive Officer, Perry Oren, on the Oakland County Megacast. Perry, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you on. How are you? How's your team at Jewish Family Service doing?
Well, all things considered in the pandemic, we're doing what we need to be doing. We've never been closed. We're open for business, helping people left and right in different ways than we ever thought we'd be doing before.
For those that are unfamiliar, Perry, what does Jewish Family Service provide to the community?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So Jewish Family Service has been around for almost 100 years, 92 years, and we've evolved a lot over the years, of course. And we are basically a cradle to grave organization. There's three big buckets of service that we provide. The first big bucket is outpatient mental health counseling. So psychotherapy or behavioral health services, depending on how you want to call that. And of course, we're all doing that Zoom now. That's one big bucket, mental health services. The second big bucket of services that Jewish Family Service provides is what I'd call safety net services. So helping people navigate various service delivery streams if they're having hard financial times, whether it's to get queued up to the Department of Health and Human Services or to get some dollars from a rabbi, a priest, an imam, whatever. So we help people to try to make ends meet. That's the second big bucket of services, safety net services. The third big bucket of services is what I call older adult services. We help older adults who are our neighbors wherever we live to age in place in their homes, in single family homes, apartments, and condominiums. And as we all get older, as we know, we need more and more and more help, whether that's changing a light bulb or getting a home delivered meal or having someone come into the home to do home care. So all of those three big buckets and lots of programs and services underneath those three big buckets. And let me also say too, Jewish Family Service, we're Jewish and we're non-sectarian. So we certainly were founded to serve the Jewish community 100 years ago or so. And as we evolved, we are opening our doors to serve the whole broader community.
So as you mentioned, you have not stopped during the pandemic. Need is so great right now. What are you seeing an increase of in need out in the community during this time?
Right. So organizations like ours can't afford to close during a pandemic. We sort of have an inverse relationship to bad things. Like pandemics. So when pandemics happen, Jewish Family Service needs to get into hyperdrive. So there's an increase in need for all of the stuff that we are helping people with. So people obviously are having more trouble making ends meet. The second bucket of service I talked about, safety net services. Older adults are more socially isolated than ever. And probably that's the scariest piece of our business at this point, because who knows how long this is going to go on. But as a previous commercial I heard happening in between this and the last segment said older adults should be staying at home. So we're seeing an increase in that. And third, mental health counseling. So everybody on the planet is ostensibly more anxious than before, whether you had a previous diagnosis or not, a mental health concern. So everybody is looking for somebody to talk to, whether that's a professional or not. Mental health services are very much needed. So our whole entire business is being taxed as it should in these really, really, really hard times.
Perry Oren with us. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Service of Metropolitan Detroit. With us on the Oakland County Megacast. And Perry, we've done some work with the organization in the past at Civic Center TV and Lakes FM, covering some of the many classes that are also held for mental health services and so on at Jewish Family Service. Has any of that continued on over the course of the pandemic, or any plans to provide those services going forward, maybe through virtual means, as that's also really critical to the community as people are learning how to deal with these issues and learning how to help their loved ones and other people that they're involved with as well?
So absolutely, we are still in the space of creating content to help people in these hard times, as well as to provide different types of classes, for instance, for family caregivers of people with chronic illnesses. For any of the list of services that we provide, you can go to jfsdetroit.org and peruse our offerings. But indeed, we and the rest of the world has sort of pivoted to try to figure out how not to offer things that we were doing in person to obviously do things in a format like this via Zoom or whatever makes sense for people telephonically or otherwise. So yes, we are still doing classes, holding people's hands who are going through hard times. And like I said before, whereas counseling used to be all face-to-face, three-dimensional, it's now two-dimensional through Zoom and reimbursable. We were able to bill third parties, Blue Cross, Medicare, Medicaid, and others. So we're still very much in that space and expect, as I said before, to be increasing the amount of business that will be coming our way in that space as we know that people need our help.
Volunteers are so important to your organization. How has that side been going for you? Fewer volunteers? You need more volunteers?
Yeah, so absolutely. I work in a workplace where there's about 120 employees, and there's roughly in any given year 1,000 or so volunteers doing various things, from helping us do clerical stuff to being friendly visitors to delivering Meals on Wheels, etc. And so the story there is there's a different need for volunteers than there was before. So while we're not doing as much face-to-face time, so we used to have friendly visitors, people like you and me who'd go out to someone's grandma or grandpa's house to look through photo albums, to go out to Leo's for lunch, whatever people do. What we're now doing, of course, instead of that is sort of telephone reassurance or Zoom reassurance or FaceTime reassurance. So we're always looking for volunteers for that, because we know that older adults are locked in and need more connectivity to people like us. Also, the home delivered meals program that we do in connection with National Council of Jewish Women, that's more than doubled in the last many, many months. And so we're looking for more volunteers for our Meals on Wheels program to either pack meals or to deliver meals to older adults' homes.
Perry Oren with us. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Service of Metropolitan Detroit. Perry, for those who are at home right now, or those who are looking for something to get involved in the community, they may want to help and volunteer with Jewish Family Service and help with these essential services to the community. How can people get involved with Jewish Family Service if they fit in that category?
You can certainly inquire. Again, I'd steer people to our website or to the telephone number right behind me, 248-592-2313, and inquire about possibilities. There's more, as we'd all understand, there's more of a demand from volunteers to want to volunteer than we have the capacity to plug people into, but we're trying to create more volunteer opportunities because the generosity of people out there is huge, whether that generosity is sending us a check or wanting to volunteer or something different. So you can go to our website and look for volunteer opportunities, and then go to the right person that the website will steer you to, and we could hopefully shepherd a good experience or keep you in mind for other experiences that we're creating moving forward.
Perry, the need for these services you had mentioned before earlier on in the interview has increased in a time of struggle like this during a pandemic, and that's when organizations like yours have to step up and become more involved than they are in our normal times. But the pandemic's far from over, and then after the pandemic, there is the recovery from the pandemic. Do you imagine that your services are going to become even more critical than they have during the pandemic as we go forward?
Absolutely. So most of us are focused on yesterday, today, and tomorrow. People like me and many of my colleagues need to be focusing on the next 10 years. So I have as a frame of reference the 2008, 2009 recession, and many people are still recovering from that. So while we did lots of interesting work in 2008, 9, 10 to sort of help people get back on their feet, after 2010, for the next decade, arguably, we were still helping. So similarly, I know the Jewish Family Service and other organizations like Jewish Family Service will be helping people recover from this pandemic for decades to come. So we can't just be fundraising for today and tomorrow. We also have to be figuring out what does our infrastructure need to look like in 5 years from now, because people will be hurting for sure financially, as lots of businesses are closing or in the process of closing, and people will need help to make ends meet.
How challenging is it to try and fundraise right now? Because, like you said, businesses are hurting as well, but yet the need is greater for you.
It's very challenging. So while people want to be generous to us and we exist on the generosity of a generous community, individuals are also sort of looking at their checkbooks to try to figure out whether they're going to be able to pay their rent, their mortgage. And so it's really hard to do fundraising in this environment. We're thankful, though, for lots of funds and foundation, places like the United Way, places like the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit, governmental dollars. So all of those machinery pieces are still functioning, although all of them, like the United Ways of the world, the federations of the world, are also trying to figure out, even though they've had some success in the short term raising additional dollars for COVID-19 relief, they're wondering what's their campaign going to look like next year, which will then have a trickle down, potentially bad, negative impact on places like Jewish Family Service. So the fundraising landscape is very challenging, and it will be very challenging for years to come as a result of this.
Perry Oren with us, the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Service, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Perry, anything else that would be interesting for our audience to know or important for our audience to know about your services? If there's somebody that is in need of these services, what are the ways that they can also reach out and have those provided to them by Jewish Family Service?
Sure. So Jewish Family Service is one organization amid many human service organizations in our Tri-County area in Southeast Michigan. And what I would say to people is that there is help out there, whether it's a Jewish Family Service or one of our sister organizations within the Jewish community or the broader community. I would encourage people to know that they can call on Jewish Family Service, or they could dial up 211, which is United Way's service, and sort of put out the situation, the problem that you are in, and hopefully there will be solutions at a place like Jewish Family Service. So many people don't know that there are resources. One thing that Jewish Family Service does in times like this is we help people navigate these somewhat complicated service delivery streams. So please call us, call 211, and we will try to help you in whatever way we can. If we're not the right organization for you, for whatever reasons, we will try to get you to the right organization, because there is help out there for people. We are a service-rich environment.
You do so much good, and before we let you go, just as this crisis continues on, can you talk a little bit about the importance of faith during this pandemic?
Sure. So while I am not a rabbi and Jewish Family Service is not a synagogue, I do believe that each one of us does plug into whatever faith, spirituality that we have, and the need for connectivity with other people and within ourselves is paramount if we're going to get through this. I know that everybody on the planet in a different way, shape, or form is struggling and wondering what's going to be like tomorrow and wondering when I could go back to normal, etc. So to me, faith, even though I'm not a faith leader, even though I lead a faith-based human service organization, faith and spirituality and connectivity is very, very important, in addition to the provision of things like human services that we do at Jewish Family Service.
Well, Perry, we thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Perry Oren, the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Service of Metropolitan Detroit, with us on the Oakland County Megacast, and Ronnie Perry's organization and other organizations like them doing such important work right now as people are continuing to struggle through the pandemic. And that's only going to continue on, and there's only going to be more that are continuing to struggle, or people coming back with different struggles after the pandemic as the recovery goes on, because we're still at least maybe 6-7 months away from any chance of a vaccine as current projections are going. And then from there, you have what happens in the aftermath of disasters like we're in.
I think a lot of times we see people have so much pride that they don't want to reach out and ask for help. But this is not the time to be too proud to ask for help. Even if you don't need it financially, it could be from the mental side. There's so much stress going on during this crisis for all individuals. And even if you do have close family members, sometimes you need to speak to someone maybe that you don't have a personal connection with them, so that you can be open and honest. So there are a lot of services, and we encourage everyone to reach out to all these organizations. There is a lot of help out there. You just have to take the time to seek it out.
There is, and there's so many great organizations in Metropolitan Detroit, in the Oakland County area, all throughout the state of Michigan, and there's resources out there from the county level, from the state level, from the federal level that can help point you in that direction as well. And then there's organizations like Jewish Family Service and people like Perry Oren that are also willing to say, well, maybe my organization's not the right one to help you out, but we know of a few that may be better suited for you, and they'll point you in that right direction as we continue through this time. And then people also are more willing now, it seems, from what Perry was saying, to volunteer their time and their energy and their care toward these people that are in need in our community and other communities. And maybe there's not enough opportunity necessarily in some places for volunteers' time, but that energy is going to be so helpful in the community, whether it's through this kind of an organization or not, to help support people through what's coming during the rest of the pandemic and afterward.
Volunteering helps not only yourself, but someone else as well. And I think the volunteer situation isn't as dire as it was in the beginning of the pandemic, because now, we are seeing the restrictions are starting to be lifted a little bit more, so people are more comfortable going outside the home. So as a reminder, a lot of organizations still need that help. So if you are able to do so, you have a little bit of extra time, go ahead, try to volunteer if you're comfortable doing so, because the organizations are going to need it. Because just like businesses are going to take a long time to recover, that is being felt extremely, even more so now in some of these organizations and nonprofit organizations as well. So anytime a volunteer can step in and take a little bit of that burden off of their bottom line financially, it's going to help them in the long term of this pandemic.
Yeah, and so many businesses, so many organizations struggling during this time, people struggling during this time. That's going to be even more the case as we go forward and we recover from the experiences of this disaster that we have lived through and continue to live through. So organizations like Jewish Family Service, we'll continue to talk to them here about their continued service in the community and how other people can get involved in helping others in our community going forward. Just a few more minutes left in today's edition of the Oakland County Megacast. So before we go, I want to go through some of our many resources for you to learn more about COVID-19, learn more about our show, and other information on our website on civiccentertv.com. civiccentertv.com. And on our homepage, we have information from our latest episode. So, of course, today's content will be up there sometime this afternoon. But if you missed the recent episodes, you can find the most recent episode each and every day on our homepage and on civiccentertv.com/megacast, or by clicking on the Megacast link on our homepage. You can find more information about all of our TV and radio stations, about us here at Civic Center TV and Lakes FM, as well as our other partnering radio stations like 88.1 The Biff and Birmingham Area Municipal Access. In addition, you can suggest information for us to cover on our fill-out form on civiccentertv.com/megacast. And if you're just tuning in now and it's the end of the show, you've missed the whole episode, you can watch full episodes on demand. Go to the interviews. You know someone's going to be on the show today, and you want to make sure to watch their interview, and you didn't get to see the live show, you can watch their full interviews as well. And if you're just short on time and you need to just have the most important bites of information possible, you can also watch short clips on our website on civiccentertv.com/megacast. In addition, each and every day we are updating civiccentertv.com/coronavirus with the top stories from each and every day out in the news. It continues to break and be something different every single day about COVID-19 and other top stories. You can view those online on civiccentertv.com/megacast. And in addition, find links to resources about COVID-19 directly from state, local, and federal sources. So if you're living in Bloomfield Hills and you need information about COVID-19 in Bloomfield Hills, click on the Bloomfield Hills link. It'll take you directly to the City of Bloomfield Hills' coronavirus informational page, which has contact information for City Hall, for building inspectors, and information about the city's response to COVID-19. In addition, you can find links to websites such as the Oakland County website about COVID-19, which has information about how to contact their nurse on call, how to set up appointments for drive-through testing, request a toolkit for your business if you need some help with complying with the COVID-19 guidelines. All of that is on Oakland County's website. And rather than jumping through hoops to try to find that on this information on a bunch of different websites, you can go directly to civiccentertv.com facebook.com/coronavirus, and we have direct links to resources from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and many of our local municipalities in our coverage area. Again, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus for all of that information and more. We thank you for tuning in today. That is going to do it for Monday's edition of the Oakland County Megacast. I am Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl. We'd like to thank our Facebook partner, the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, our partnering TV and radio stations, 88.1 The Biff and Birmingham Area Municipal Access. In addition, all of our guests today, Carla Bailo from the Center for Automotive Research, Kimberly Smith from Mathnasium, Lena Antoon from Oakland and Wayne State Universities, Nathan Hamoud from Desert Oasis Coffee Roasters, and Perry Oren from Jewish Family Service of Metropolitan Detroit. In addition, a big thank you to our entire crew, our Zoom producer, Larry Nyling, making sure our guests are all ready to go on our Zoom calls each and every day on the show. Jake Kustash, our booking producer, for making sure everything's lined up and ready to go and bringing all those great guests we have on the show to our program each and every day. Our executive director at the Cable Commission, Dave Alberry, our CEO and at Motown Digital, and the general manager of Civic Center TV, Dave Scott, and all of you that tune in each and every day from 10 a.m. to 12 noon for the Oakland County Megacast. That is going to do it for today's edition of the show. Ronnie and I will return tomorrow at 10 a.m. for tomorrow's edition of the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations. We wish you a very happy Monday.